I never thought about my son's sidewalk chalk painting being what would lead an HOA president to be dragged away in handcuffs. But that is just what happened last Sunday at our quiet suburban neighborhood of Oakwood Heights. My name is Daniel Mitchell. I am a computer software designer and single father to my very imaginative 8-year-old son, Ethan. We relocated 6 months ago, attracted by the decent schools and clean neighborhood. What the realtor tactfully did not mention was that our homeowners association was run by Karen Wilkins, a 50-something woman with helmet-shaped blonde hair and a penchant for quoting esoteric bylaw violations. Like they were federal offenses from day one. Karen had been writing me on everything from the color of my mailbox. Seemingly midnight blue wasn't the same as the approved naval blue to the length of my lawn grass. She actually came by with a ruler. But I kept my cool, complied rules where necessary and stood up, pushed politely back. When not this approach had the effect of angering her even more so than outright refusal would have the turning point incident started. Happened innocently enough. It was a beautiful spring Saturday, and Ethan wanted to paint a sidewalk chalk mural in our driveway. He'd learned about ocean life at school, so he spent hours developing an underwater scene with colorfish, coral, and even a friendly-looking shark. I helped out with some of details, and by the late afternoon, we were standing back to admire our handiwork. Ethan glowed with pride, his hands and knees powdered with chalk dust. "Dad, can we get a photo and send it to Mom?" he asked excitedly his mother. My ex-wife was off on a business trip, and I knew she'd love to see his artwork. We'd only just snapped a few pictures when I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice behind us. "Excuse me, Daniel, but what are you thinking exactly?" she said, her voice cold as lemonade on a hot summer evening. I turned to see her at the border of our driveway clipboard. In her hand, designer sunglasses clipped to her nose. Even though the sun was already dipping below horizon, "Just spending some father-son time," I said, with a smile, putting a protective hand on Ethan's shoulder. Ethan made quite the masterpiece today. Karen put on a display of citing her clipboard section. 12 paragraph 4 of the community guidelines says, in no uncertain terms, that outside surfaces visible from the street cannot be changed or decorated in any way without written advance approval by the board. She looked up from her clipboard with what can only be described as smug satisfaction. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to keep cool for Ethan's sake. "Karen, it's sidewalk chalk. It will wash off with the next rain. The forecast is showers tomorrow night rules." "Daniel," she said, looking down at Ethan's painting with contempt. "This kind of thing is exactly what depresses property values. I will have to issue a formal violation notice." She began scribbling wildly on a form. Ethan looked up at me, his face falling. "Are we in trouble, Dad?" he whispered. I squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "Nobody, there's nothing wrong with your beautiful painting. Mrs. Wilkins just has a different comprehension of the regulations than we do." I had a strong voice and optimism, although beneath the surface I was seething. Karen tore off the violation notice and jammed it in my face. "I expect this to get resolved by tomorrow morning. Or you will have to pay a $50 fine per day. It remains there, it will double the worth." She spun around and walked off. Before I could respond. To that evening, I helped Ethan with taking additional photographs of his artwork from different angles, promising him we'd print his favorite one to hang in his room. I explained that sometimes adults get too wrapped up in rules and forget about what truly counts, like being creative and having fun. He seemed to understand, though he was disappointed that his creation would have to be washed away earlier than planned. The next morning, Ethan and I were having breakfast when I heard commotion outside. I opened the front door to view Karen in my driveway, with a man wearing a uniform who was operating a pressure washer water, already destroying Ethan's mural. I could not believe my eyes. "What are you doing?" I stormed, running down the steps behind Ethan. "You had no right to enter my property." My voice was loud now, but I still had my senses about me. Karen turned to face me with an expression of constructed innocence. "I gave you notice yesterday. The bylaws clearly indicate that the HOA can rectify infractions if homeowners fail to do so within the provided time limit. The time limit you gave me was until this morning." I shot back, feeling my face warm up in anger. "It's barely 8 a.m., the notice stated dawn," Karen replied smugly. "The sun rose up at 6:43 today." Ethan tugged on my sleeve. His eyes filled with tears as he watched his work hours disappear under the powerful spray. "Dad, they're ruining it," he said in a trembling voice. I got down to his level. "I know, mate. I'm absolutely sorry. But remember, we have the pictures." I turned to Karen, who was now instructing the worker to make sure he got every last bit of that eyesore some neighbors had come out of their homes, attracted by the uproar. I seen a couple of them shaking their heads disapprovingly at Karen's behavior. One of them, Mrs. Patel, who lives across the street, came over to us with a sympathetic smile that was a beautiful sketch. "Ethan," she said kindly, "my grandchildren enjoyed admiring it when they came yesterday." Karen appeared not to notice the crowd and went on with her crusade now. "About that fine," she said, producing another document from her clipboard, as I had to organize for cleanup. "There will be an extra service charge of $100 on top of the infraction charge." I was about to protest when something even worse happened. Ethan had dropped some of his pieces of chalk in a small pail on the side of the driveway. Karen noticed them, walked over, picked up the entire pail, and without hesitation, hurled it into the trash truck that just so happened to be passing by our street. Ethan cried out in dismay. Those weren't any old chalks. They were a special artist grade set his mom had given him for his birthday. I was shocked momentarily by Karen's brazenness, but quickly regained my voice. "You had absolutely no right to do that," I said authoritatively. "That was my son's private property," Karen shrugged her hand dismissively. "They were left on common area property and presented a safety hazard." "My driveway is not common area property," I told her, grappling to keep in mind a level tone. "You've now damaged personal property and trespassed." "This has gone far enough," she disdainfully snorted. "Are you threatening me? My husband golfs with half the police force in this town." What Karen didn't know was that even though this confrontation had been building, Ethan had slipped out to get my phone more significantly. She didn't know that among the arriving group of neighbors was Jason Reynolds, a young adult who lived 2 doors down. Jason, as it happened, was son of Judge Patricia Reynolds, who served on the county circuit court. And Jason, like most teens nowadays, had been videotaping the entire experience. "I'm not menacing you, Karen," I said quietly. "I'm merely informing you that your actions have crossed a number of legal boundaries." Pressure washer man, obviously ill at ease with the scene, had shut off his equipment and was walking back toward his truck. Karen remained unfazed, still holding clipboard like a shield. "I'm calling the police," I announced, taking my phone away from Ethan with an appreciative nod. "Go ahead," Karen snorted. "They'll explain all about how the HOA covenants operate." I called 911 and explained to the dispatcher what was happening, making sure to mention the destruction of property and unlawful entry to Karen's wide-mouthed amaze. The dispatcher took it seriously and told us officers would be dispatched soon. While we waited, other neighbors gathered, many of them grumbling their assistance from us. It seemed Karen had been making life tough for everyone, not ours alone. Jason visited and whispered that he had captured everything on camera and would be more than happy to produce it. If I thanked him, grateful for the surprise evidence when 2 police officers showed up. About 15 minutes later, Karen suddenly had a different demeanor. Her voice rose to a higher note, and she batted her eyelashes as she explained how she was just doing her job as HOA president, and how I was causing a scene. Officer Rodriguez, however, wasn't buying it. He listened carefully to both versions, took statements from some of the neighbors who had seen the incident, and observed Jason's video. His partner, Officer Chen, read over the HOA bylaws that Karen kept pushing in their faces. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez finally said, "based on what we've seen and heard, you entered this gentleman's property without the proper authorization and damaged personal belongings of a child. The HOA bylaws you've shown don't entitle you to do either of those actions." Karen's face changed from assertive to confused. "But I'm the president of the HOA," she stuttered, as if title granted her diplomatic immunity. "That doesn't make you above the law, ma'am," Officer Chen said firmly. "You had no legal right to dispose of the child's property, and entering someone's private property to remove non-hazardous things without notice is trespassing." Karen's face turned red. "This is absurd. Do you know who my husband is?" "It doesn't matter who your husband is," Officer Rodriguez responded calmly. "What concerns are your actions today?" He then did something I never expected. He reached for handcuffs. "Mrs. Wilkins, you're under arrest for criminal trespass and vandalism," as the officers read Karen her rights. Her expression changed from outrage to shock. The neighbors stood in stunned silence as she was led to the police car, still ranting loudly about her HOA jurisdiction and her husband's contacts. The case moved quickly through the courts, thanks in part to the unambiguous video proof and plenty of witness testimony. 3 weeks later, I attended the courthouse as the judge, not Judge Reynolds, who had disqualified herself because of her son's participation. But equally blunt-speaking Judge Morris handed Karen's punishment a fine of $1,500 for destruction of property, 60 hours of community service for criminal trespass, and a restraining order preventing her from coming within 50 feet of my property or contacting my family. But the cherry on top came when the judge spoke directly to Karen before adjourning Mrs. Wilkins. The court strongly recommends that you step down from your position on the Homeowners Association Board, as your actions demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of the limits of your authority should similar charges be brought against you in the future. This court will not be so generous. Her face fell in shock as the gavel descended. Her immaculately styled hair seemed to deflate with it, along with her ego, as she discovered her reign of suburban terror was over at last. As she turned to exit the courtroom, her eyes locked on mine for a moment. And I saw something I had never been brave enough to dream to see in Karen Wilkins.